Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here in front of you all today to talk about an art style, an aesthetic, or as our dear art teacher Clarissa would have called it, an avant-garde movement. I created it and named it myself. It's called Beyondism. Now, what is Beyondism? Well, Beyondism, to put it extremely simply, is the art that depicts the world in ways humans couldn't perceive it, with senses that do not belong to us. Now, if that seems like a complicated explanation, don't worry, it will become incredibly clear later on. Now, as for the word itself, Beyondism, it actually comes from the 1920 Lovecraftian tale, From Beyond, in which a scientist and his friend unlock sensory organs dormant deep within themselves that, when awakened, can finally reveal to them these otherworldly, interdimensional horrors. You know, typical Lovecraft stuff. But now, as you can see, I have three pieces here in front of me. And the first one, this is the example I always give to everyone, is this scene right here. Now, it's not a complicated scene to understand. It's a little boy in a park with a tennis ball ready to play with his dog. Now, there are two things you might have noticed about this image. One, there's no dog. And two, the color scheme seems a little bit off. Well, that's because the scene is exactly the same as you'd imagined it, but it's from the perspective of the dog itself. According to PetMD and the National Institute of Health, dogs, unlike humans, have only two color cones within their eyes, making them dichromatic. Instead of being able to perceive the so-called three primaries, red, yellow, and blue, they only see yellow and blue. Anything that is red or is derived from red will either be converted to grays and whites or this muddish green color. Dogs also are extremely short-sighted, meaning that things around them will perceive either blurred, blotchy, or rough, pun completely intended. Now, this is all fun and games, right? This is usually a very silly, a very nice example I usually give to people so they can get a clear grasp on what Beyondism is. Now, for the second piece I want to show you here today, I want you to imagine the following scenario. Imagine millions or billions of years into the future, the Earth is completely barren, it's a complete wasteland, the sun is expanding into a red giant, nothing is left. But then, aliens, or extraterrestrials, from behind the stars decide to come and visit this frozen wasteland. And humanity, not wanting to be lost in the sands of time, decides to leave one final piece behind. One piece of human ingenuity, creativity, and a staple of their existence here on Earth. An image, one monument with an image representing all of humanity from its beginning to its very end, in one single figure. Now, what does such an image look like? I am not qualified to answer, unfortunately, but what I am is determined, and here's my attempt. Okay, I feel like I need to explain myself a little bit here. Some of you may look at this and think, Heitor, that looks like a bathroom sign. And yes, it does, you're correct. But the thing about this image is that we want to encapsulate all of humanity into a single figure, something that is not very easily done. And that brings up a few questions that I might not be able to address, which are, first, is this even possible to encapsulate all humanity's infinite complexities into one figure? My answer to that is probably not. Again, this was just my attempt. And another thing, slightly more interesting, is it possible for the artist creating this image to avoid omitting certain groups of people in its representation? Because here's the thing, right? For us to create this portrait, it would have to be incredibly simple. It wouldn't be able to have genitalia. It wouldn't be able to have a defined skin color. It wouldn't be able to have ethnic-specific characteristics. It wouldn't be able to have variable traits like realistic body types or noses or belly buttons. Anything of that sort, we can't add that. We want the fundamental, quintessential shape of man to be depicted. Now, some of you, the more astute of you, might have noticed something about this image. Its face. Now, some of you might have just thought of the screen mask, which I don't personally blame you. I got that a lot while I was making this. But according to the UT Medical Center, the UT Research Medical Center, babies, while even inside the womb, if they are shown this particular pattern in the form of light being shown into their mother's womb, they will not only be able to spot those lights, but they are also capable of connecting them, of realizing that it's a human face. They will recognize it as a human face, even though they've never seen such a thing before. And we know that because they'll keep moving along, they'll track it with their heads, they'll move along with it. So I took inspiration from this study to make sure that this was the simplest, most fundamental depiction of a human face that could ever possibly be. And another detail that some of you noticed but probably didn't put much thought into, it's in black and white. Now, why is that? Like if aliens were to truly come down to Earth, they would probably not have the same vision as us. Check my first example for a more clear reading on that. But if they don't have the same vision, the same colored vision as us, there might be a little bit of a language barrier, the good old switcheroo, the good old misunderstanding. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. So instead, to avoid any sort of ambiguity, we'll only use the two most distinct, impossible to mistake, unchanging values, not colors, values that exist in our universe, black and white. Okay, now, I need you guys to bear with me. As someone who does visual arts, these next few words are going to sting a little, so let's take a deep breath. Artificial intelligence doesn't have the ability of sight as we usually define it, having eyes and being able to see stuff around us. But it still does see its users as sources of inputs or profiles that it will occasionally interact with and answer questions to. At least in a metaphorical sense, right? According to OpenAI themselves, the creators of ChatGPT, the most common use for artificial intelligence in 2026 is therapeutic, in which people, instead of going to real, living, flesh and blood breathing therapists, will rely on AI. Because, what AI is going to judge you? So we have a bit of a problem here. AI doesn't know what emotion is. How does it look at a message that is filled with love, passion, happiness, hatred, anguish, sadness, possible depression, and be able to not only read that, but also understand what it says and transform it into a satisfying output? Again, this is more abstract than both of my other examples here, but here's my attempt. Okay, again, I feel like I need to explain myself a little. So, since AI sees these concepts such as emotion, feelings, or the infinitely complex intricacies of the human psyche are completely alien to it. So when it receives a message that is not only filled with these, but has an intention behind them, it has emotion, it has thought put into it, it doesn't compute as well, right? It's completely foreign. In this image, I chose to depict it as the human message, the one that is oh so saddening or oh so emotional, as contrasting, as catchy, as pop as I possibly could when compared to its background. You can see it itself. I made it very literal. It is fleshy, it is vital, it is visceral. It is not at all it is not at all similar to its otherwise monochromatic background. But all right. This is all fine and dandy, right? But a few of you, a few apples among you might ask a few questions, such as, Heitor, this is stupid. Who cares? Like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, what does dichromatic vision have to do with the end of the world or artificial intelligence? We won't even be around to see the end of the world. What's the point in any of this? But I'm here to tell you that all this does have a purpose, and a very good one at that. Tell me if you heard of this before. Originality is dead. Nothing's new. There are no new ideas anymore. There are no new thinkers anymore. This originality, this passion to create this spark is supposedly dying. Now, I, personally, believe that's a load of crap, right? But even if it is true, Beyondism is my attempt to remedy that problem. Also, second off, that's just rude. Why would you tell me that? Anyway, Beyondism isn't concrete art as we know it. It is also not abstract. It is the bridge between these two concepts. All of these things are real, even if they are expressed in a hypothetical or a metaphorical sense. These are all based on real concepts, but they are far beyond our comprehension of the world and its workings. Even the most creative, imaginative, and passionate artists, such as Dali or even biblical imagery, are still all based on things we see, understand, or perceive every day. For example, in the biblical book of Revelation, there are ginormous locust-like creatures with human heads, long hair, and massive scorpion stingers. Now, I'm sure none of you would have probably come up with such a thing in the next few decades, I'm sure. Again, they didn't have much to do, so that's pretty much the reason why they could come up with such things. But at its core, all this is John of Patmos, the widely agreed upon author of Revelation, grabbing a bunch of different creatures and beings and just doing the good old smushing them together. And even Lovecraft himself, the stereotypical tentacled octopus giant god being that is Cthulhu, is still based on something Lovecraft not only knew, but something he despised: seafood. What Beyondism is art breaking from this mold. Beyondism is the difference between conceiving something and perceiving something. For example, this very first work, I can conceive of a scene of of a boy playing with his dog, seen from the dog's perspective. I mean, I painted it, right? But I will never perceive the world this way. The only reason why I can even conceive of such a thing is because I have data, I have research, I have resources that gave me everything I need to depict such an image. But Beyondism is is not a whole new world or a whole new universe. It is a multiverse of perspectives, ideologies, questions, and answers to match. It is disconnected from the way we see the world usually. And going back to my point of originality dying, it's because there are so many different perspectives or ideas that have never been even thought of, even by the most imaginative artists. Like, for example, what would the Mona Lisa look like to a snake who only sees in infrared? Since ideas like this are not just infinite, they are more than infinite. They go beyond the infinite perception of humans. But speaking of beyond, while I was writing this script originally, specifically this painting, someone came up to me and asked me, but what if the aliens are blind? I mean, if I'm doing visual media depicting someone else's point of view, that implies they have sight. But what happens when they don't? Unfortunately, I'm not qualified enough to answer that, unfortunately. But that's a good thing. You know why? Because that means that somehow, someday, someone, maybe someone even in this crowd right now, or someone who watches this later on, will be inspired by this very talk, this very idea, these very examples right here in front of me, or behind me. And they will come up on stage, stand in front of a crowd in this very carpet, and talk about Beyondist music, Beyondist sculptures, Beyondist cinema, and whatever else. The lesson I want you guys to walk away with here is that regardless of how unoriginal your ideas, or at least how you think your ideas are, regardless of how imaginative other people are, you are always capable of going not only above, but going above and beyond. Thank you.